will I send the request? Yeah, there you go.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Raphael Ng, and together with Erdo and Megan Malloy, we are coordinators for the HDCA's Early Career Researchers and Practitioners Network. So to begin, just a brief matter on housekeeping. This session, this 1.5-hour session, will be recorded for the benefit and inclusion of those who are not able to attend the session. If you prefer not to be featured online, please turn your camera off and send your questions via the chat to us, either publicly or directly to one of us, Erdo, Megan, and myself. And our team will collect these questions, group them into similar topic types, and then we'll seed them to our moderator. So today we have put together a panel of editors from various journals that publish the capabilities research. And this is a place for them to discuss some of the directions and the issues in publishing capabilities papers, capabilities research. So moderating our panel is our association's president-elect, Enrica Chiappero-Martinetti, who was also our former editor for the Journal of Human Development and Capabilities. So without further ado, Enrica will now say a few words and introduce our notable panelists.
Thank you. Thank you, Raphael, and thank you, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. So I know that we have people coming from different parts of the world, so welcome to this session. Well, first of all, let me just really thank Raphael, Maggie, and sorry, the other name, Mike Cannon, and Erdal, for having organized this interesting session. I think that is an excellent opportunity for all of us to reflect on the possibility to publish our research work in different journals, and also to have the possibility to interact, to compare to different perspectives, the different views, the different approaches that journals, academic journals, may have regarding the research work developed in the field of the human development and capability. So, welcome everybody. I'm very much happy to introduce now our panelists. Most of them are people that are friends and very much actively engaged in the life of the association. So it is a special pleasure to have all of you tonight, this evening, for this session. So let me just first of all introduce Alejandra Boni. She's the new editor of the Journal of Human Development and Capabilities, and she will let us know what is the address that she would like to give to the journal. And also, she will also tell us something more about the journal that, as you may know, is the journal of the association since now almost 20 years. So it is the journal that typically most of the scholars or researchers refer to for dialoguing with other people and for publishing, submitting their own research work. So welcome, Sandra. Then we have, I'm following the alphabetic order, of course, we have Filomena Magina. Welcome, Filomena. Filomena is the editor-in-chief of the Social Indicators Research, which again is another important journal that in a way seems to be open to consider articles that are produced by scholars in this field. So welcome, Filomena. Thank you for having accepted our invitation. Then I guess we are, oh no, Martin is there. Hi, Martin, nice to see you. Martin Fanis is a political philosopher, is in the advisory board, and is a senior editor of the very outstanding journal, which is Economics and Philosophy. So we'll be able also to learn more about this journal, which is multidisciplinary in a way, and again is a reference journal for our community. Then we have Laurie Keller. Thank you, Lori, for being with us. She's the editor of the Journal of Global Ethics. Again, it's an important journal for our community. And finally, we have Raphael Ziegler. He's the associate editor of the Journal of Social Entrepreneurship, and is also associate editor of the Journal of Human Development and Capabilities. So again, it's really nice to see you all. Let me just briefly say a few words on how we are planning to organize this session. We were considering the possibility to have 2 rounds of the discussion. In the first round, I would like to invite all the editors and associate editors to say something about the interest or the relevance of the capability approach for your journals. What are the lines of the capability approach research, or what are the key topics you think that are especially interesting for your journals and you like to be discussed from a capability perspective. Then if you have any suggestions regarding the submission of capability approach related papers to your journal, or if you can see any special strengths or weaknesses point that you think that are important in order to be accepted or unfortunately to be rejected in your journals, are more than. This is the first round, so we would like to really give you the floor for discussing one or more of these issues. While in the second round, we like to to know more about the journal policies and your view regarding what is a hot issues in this moment in the academia, which is the open access issues. So what is the policy, if you have any policy in your journal regarding, or a special position regarding these question, these issues of open access publication? And then we will also ask you to tell us what is if there are any possible support that your journals is able to offer for non-English speaking contributors, which again is something that is quite relevant topic for our community, which is really international. So we have scholars from different countries, and most of them are not English mother tongues. So then we'd like also to save some time for Q&A. So please, for all the participants to this session, if you have any Q&A, you can send them to the chat, and let us hope that we'll be able to address most of them. So let's go for the first round, which is fine. So again, just very quickly, what are the reason, the interest or the relevance of the capability approach for your journals, if any? Because we hope that there are some interest on that. And what are, if there are any special topics or lines of research that you think that can be especially important to be analyzed or investigated through the lens of the capability. So I don't know if you'd like to follow again the alphabetic order, maybe in the first round, and then you can use the reverse order. So Sandra, would you like to start?
Yes, thanks, Enrica. So, well, thanks for the invitation for organizing this panel. And I'm the editor, the new editor-in-chief of the Journal of Human Development Capabilities. So please, Enrica, you also can contribute to all the things that I'm going to say. Well, in our case of the Journal of the Association, of course, that is 100% centered on research or whatever we want to publish related with human development and capabilities approach. So in that sense, is 100% related with the topic. So I'm going to say something about some reasons to reject papers, which are not, and you can understand that the opposite to this reason to reject are the reason to start the peer review process. Okay. So some of the reason, more frequent reason to reject paper at the first instance. So at this reject at the first stage. So the first one, and maybe one of the most important, is the manuscript lie outside the state aims and scope of the journal. This is very common in our desk rejection. So which are the state and aims of our journal? So we welcome articles that offer contribution in poverty, inequality, well-being analysis, agency, gender, development ethics as well, social justice issues. So there is a wide range of topics, but those topics should be connected with human development and capabilities approach. This is, to me, as far as I'm acting as editor-in-chief, is the most common reason to reject at the first stage a paper. Another reason is that there is not enough connection with the human development and capabilities approach contributions. Sometimes paper quote the most seminal papers, Amartya Sen, Martha Nussbaum, but not other developments. And there is a lot to say in any of our areas about the further development of these different areas approach from the human development and capability approach. So this is another reason, because sometimes the literature review is really basic. So this is another reason. There is a reason about format. I'm going to repeat what kind of formats we accept. The most common is the research paper, which is a paper between 5,000 and 8,000 words, sometimes a little bit more, but not more than 9,000 maximum. We have the policy forum contributions, which are edited by Mario Biggeri, and that are referred to specific topics on these different policy forum. And there are shorter pieces, 2,000, 3,000 words per contribution. We have book reviews, and we have notes and comments as well, which is a different, it's a shorter article, and it's a different from a research article. So this is the four kinds of contributions, and sometimes we receive reports from projects or research projects or policy projects, and then those kind of reports are not suitable for the journal. So this is another reason to reject a paper. Another one, which is common to other journals, is the poor writing and organization. So that can be connected with methods, that discussion is not relevant and repeats results, but not make an interpretation of them. And there is not explanation of the rationale of the case study. There is not enough literature review. So this is really common to other journals. And the last one is something that has to do with the preparation of the manuscript. I think Taylor and Francis gives exact details on how a manuscript should be prepared, and sometimes we find contributions or submissions that are not following the author's instructions, because they are not clear, because they are written in poor grammar or with a lot of mistakes, etc., etc. So this is more or less the fifth number of reasons to reject a paper. And the opposite, when a submission more or less follow all these the proper requirements, that is when we start the process of double peer review, which is the process of our journal. I don't know, Enrica, if you want to add something, or more or less I think I summarized the reason to reject in our journal.
Sandra, I think that you expressed very well about the requirements that in a way can be relevant for the journal. I would maybe just add something which is probably quite trivial, but I'm assuming that maybe there are some young scholars or some PhD students in the audience, so it might be relevant for them to consider that if you submitted your paper to a journal like the Journal of Human Development, which is really the journal of the association, the readership, of course, is very, very well familiar with the key concepts, and so there is no sense to spend 5-6 pages for describing what is a capability, what is a functioning, what is a complex factors, because of course this is clearly a specialized audience, so it's much better to show to what extent you are able to engage with the current debate and how you can contribute to this current debate. Probably for other journals, and now we see that the other panelists, you may spend much more in saying more about the approach because it may not be so familiar, but you have to take into account these issues. So the audience of the journal, and try to do your best for being fully engaged with the current of the book. Again, so as Sandra already pointed out, it's important to be sure that you have been able to browse the last years of the journals and see what are the papers that are relevant for your scope and you like to engage with this literature. So thank you, Sandra. Again, following the alphabetic order, I would invite Filomena now to say something about her journal. As I said before, social indicator research is an important journal, which is not just for capabilitarianists, but I can see and I appreciate the fact that often you are considered, you are open to this contribution that can come from our community. So please, Filomena, what is yours?
Well, hi everybody, thank you, of course, for inviting me in this panel. I really appreciate it because it's a very nice opportunity to share also our experiences. Well, considering the journal, maybe in the second round, I will have the opportunity to present the whole journal. Of course, social indicators research is focused on the topic of social indicators, and perhaps it's a very wide field. Just to describe our work, we have 6 co-editors and thousands of reviewers, so we have huge work. And the topic, the theme of human development is definitely one of the historical themes covered by our journal. And we have many articles on this topic since the beginning, we should say. And as you know, social indicators research was founded in 1974. And these articles are from the Human Development Group, and we have also many reviewers from with this expertise, and Enrica is one of our reviewers as well. And this is very important for us because if we want to publish in this field, article in this field, we need the top experts in this field. I haven't had the time to try to quantify the contribution in this topic of this movement in our journal, but it is certainly big and huge and very and at a very high level, I should say. Very rarely we reject manuscript on this topic because generally the submissions on this topic are always done by scholars very expert and at the high level, at the advanced level of their study. And this is important even because our journal has a very high rate of death rejection. We have 90%, a very high rate. Sometimes it happens also that we reject or we reject in advanced stages manuscripts on this topic, on this field. But this happens when the authors and the contributions are with little scientific support, we should say. Poor literature, poor references, and they are generally young scholars or maybe from some specific areas. the journal is particularly interested in having articles which dealing with the human development topic, present a focus on the methodological issues. So in the methodology of defining and constructing indicators, and these are very appreciated. And of course, also original and alternative approaches in the definition of the concept. Also, in this perspective, we are really interested. So this just to let you know that historically, social indicators is considered, research is considered one of the reference, as far as I understood, journal for scholars working in the field of human development. And it's for us really important because actually, since the journal involve also papers and articles on also in other fields, we can have a sort of debate on different perspectives in defining well-being, defining quality of life, and so on and so forth. So sometimes we are a little bit skeptical when we have to include the article in this field, which are interesting from the application point of view, but not from the methodological point of view. Maybe there are other journals more appropriate in this perspective. But really, it's one of the most important ambit of our publication. So I don't know if you want to know more this step of the discussion.
Thank you, Filomena. Excellent. Well, we'll have time for a Q&A later on. But yeah, no, I think that it is absolutely fine to know that yeah, this social indicator research is for sure is a journal open or interested in considering articles and papers on empirical and methodological aspect related to the CA and the human. So thank you, Filomena. So now I will give the floor to Martin. So we'll now moving from more empirical stuff to more conceptual or theoretical papers related to the intersection between economics and philosophy. So please, Martin.
Yeah, thank you. So maybe first of all, a disclaimer. So I was managing editor for 5 years with 3 colleagues. It's always four editors, but I stepped down a couple of years ago. So I'm not on top of it anymore as I was in the past, and I'm now indeed a member of the advisory board. But yeah, so first of all, let me emphasize that economics and philosophy as a journal has, of course, a natural fit with the capability approach. It's really combining the 2 disciplines, just like in the capability approach. That's a very important, clear feature. So there's a natural affinity, I would say. If I look at the journal and if I look at the topics that are being published, I think it's fair to say there's a distinction that can be made, and it's also a distinction that you can encounter within the capability approach. On the one hand side, there are normative contributions, and that can be from 2 different angles: normative economics and political philosophy using economic tools, roughly. Decision theory, economic tools. So that's the normative line. So normative economics or political philosophy or ethics with a clear analytical bent that is using tools from economics. So that's one hand side. On the other, there's epistemology, philosophy of economics. That's the second line, and there can be an overlap between the 2 lines. But that's, yeah, and that's also relevant to the capability approach, but perhaps just in practice, if you look at the publications, less so than the first line, the normative line, which is more obvious. I should say in all cases, I think I mentioned the analytical bent, and that's also something that you see more generally in the sense that Historical papers are not, that's economics and philosophy is not the natural outlet for historical papers or more narrative papers, I would say. Thinking about, I do think, as some of the other speakers said, it's easiest to start with pointing out the negative reasons. Why does a paper not fit the journal very well? Because that tells you something about what the journal does find important. I think there's one important consideration that's a trap that I also see among young scholars. A paper ending with the conclusion that this is a topic which is very important and we should apply the capability approach to it. I've seen so many of those papers, and I've seen so many of those papers being rejected. So don't end with the conclusion that the capability approach is helpful in studying something, but start with it and show. That's really, I think, an important observation. It's a bit of a trap. When I think about the many papers that we have seen submitted to economics and philosophy with the capability perspective, really show it. I cannot emphasize this enough. That's one. There's another tradition of papers that are being rejected, I would say, by economics and philosophy. And, I've seen so many of them basically arguing that Homo economicus doesn't work. Okay, we know that. I mean, that point doesn't have to be remade again. So I would also emphasize that point can be made, but make it in an interesting way, show what kind of new introductions or implications it have, etc., etc. But ending with that conclusion doesn't work. Then a third, warning is that sometimes it happens that people within the capability approach are not sufficiently aware of what's happening in all disciplines. So it could be economics, could be sociology, it could be psychology. There's so many things that are out there. And sometimes it happens that, you come across a paper which is really very interesting, combining psychology, capability approach, economics, philosophy, and I'm really quite excited, or was quite excited. And then you get the referee reports back, and of course you invite in a psychologist, and the psychologist then explained that, this has been going on for many years already in this area within the discipline. That's also something that you see. So those are the negatives, I would say, in the sense of reasons for not passing the bar with economics and philosophy. I do think that we are more sympathetic to and more willing to really seriously consider papers which are not written very clearly, which really need editorial work. So we are more, I think, willing to give that a serious reading, to really not be too harsh on not meeting all the editorial standards with respect to the layout, etc., the English. So give it a try in that sense. If the contents works, then we are really willing to consider it very seriously. Then I maybe as for now as a concluding remark, I do think there are many possibilities for publishing more papers within the journal than is being done. There are many different parts of the capability approach that fit so well with developments within either economics or philosophy, and which are somewhat hidden now within the capability approach. So I would also invite everyone to, people listening in, to make use of the platform. There's more possible than we may be thinking about. I'll leave it for now.
Thank you, Martin. This is really very much helpful. The suggestion that the provider can really drive the plans of our community and try to consider, what for sure is one of the outstanding journals that I can see for your journals especially, the risk that when you are writing papers that are in the intersection between disciplines, the risk is that, you can try to maybe to not be sufficiently able to use the philosophical languages, or maybe you are much better to use the economic one, or vice versa. And the risk is that, yeah, your paper might be weak when you are working in the intersection of these two disciplines. That of course they have a lot of common and potential important aspects that need to be developed, but they have their own languages, they have their own writing style, I would also say, and so it is not easy to be able to manage these two disciplines in the proper way. But yes, thank you. Your suggestions and your considerations were excellent. So still, we can still remain in the ethics fields with Lori Keller as the editor of the Journal of Global Ethics. Lori is also very well engaged and involved in our association, so she knows very well what is the current debate in our community in terms of that might be relevant for the journal in global ethics. So please, Lori.
Thank you, Enrique. Thank you to Enrique and Rafael and all the organizers for this event and for including me and the journal. It's wonderful to be here. So good day or good evening to all of you, wherever this finds you. So I'm going to put in the chat, I'm Lori Kelleher, and I'm one of the lead editors for the Journal of Global Ethics. I'm going to put in the chat an address, just a link to the journal's website. And so there it is. And I'll send another one in a moment. So our journal, as the title suggests, is the Journal of Global Ethics. We're interested in ethical reflections. Mostly, this journal has a reputation for getting papers from philosophers, economists, policymakers, sociologists, and people engaging analytically and theoretically with ethical concepts. But we also work with empirical ethical analysis as well. So the scope of the journal, which is explained on the link that I just sent, is actually broader than some people might guess. We look not only at ethical analysis, but we also are interested in hearing from practitioners on ethical work, as well as conversations between practitioners and philosophers or economists or other policymakers. So the scope is actually quite broad for the journal. Anything that will stir up ethical conversation, so long as it is anchored in the right way to be really engaging closely to ethics. So economists and people who are not working directly in foundational concepts of ethics should still consider the journal. We also advertise, at least on our website, that we will accept dialogues and conversations and interviews. We don't do a lot of book reviews, but we're considering that. So we accept a broad range of articles. The typical article is between 5,000 and 8,000 words. We say we're not going to accept over 8,000 words. If it's 8,005 words, that's okay. But we want articles that are under 8,000 words, with one notable exception. The notable exception is what I'm sending now. We don't have the impressive history of the Social Indicators Research Journal. Is 50 years next year. That's fantastic. Well, we're celebrating our 20th anniversary next year. And in celebration of that, we have a call for reflections for our global forum. And the global forum is accepting reflections that are just 1,000 to 4,000 words. So shorter pieces will be accepted for this global forum. So keep that in mind, please. We also work with people to do special editions of the journal. So if you have, and we've worked with a lot of people active in capabilities approach work for this. Julian Culp had a full special edition recently. Sandra Boni, our very own here in this panel, has a special section within a special edition of a journal. And that's pulling together papers from the International Development Ethics Association conference. The Journal of Global Ethics does have a special relationship with the International Development Ethics Association, or IDEA, and we work with IDEA on publishing articles from major congresses that they have. And the board for IDEA also does a lot of our reviewing and is successful for that. So there's a special relationship there, but we do not have any affiliation to one particular view. So unlike the Journal of Capabilities, the Capabilities Approach Journal, we don't only look at capabilities in human development. We look at ethical conversations on global issues beyond development ethics. We're also interested in global justice. We're interested in articles that present a particular cultural analysis of things. So we are interested in global ethics. Some reasons people don't get published in our journal, which our publication rate, I don't have the exact numbers, but we accept about 20% of articles. I think that's right. I just saw Tom Wells enter, and he's also an editor, so he may have those numbers for me. But we accept about 20%, so we reject about 80% of the papers we get. But we're interested in global justice, so issues that are not tied necessarily to development, but are ethical issues about war or famine or peace. Of course, we all think all of these issues are development issues, and I think that's right. But any of these global issues we're interested in. We're not interested in the narrowly defined ethical issues of particular situation ethics that don't deal with the global climate. That's a thematic limit on our scope. I think that's about it. You can find instructions for how to submit your articles in the link that I sent for the Journal of Global Ethics. There's a link within that menu for instructions for authors and submissions. We do have a double-blind peer review process. It's very rigorous. And Gareth, so this is, Gareth was kind enough to put up, I said Gareth well, but Gareth was kind enough to put up the acceptance rate is 40%. That's actually quite misleading. And we've talked to the people at Francis and Taylor about that. Our actual acceptance rate is closer to 20%. It says 40% there because of the way they run the analytics, but that doesn't take into account special issues and other things that allow more articles in without the double-blind peer review. So that if you're just submitting an article, it's actually a little bit tougher than a 40% acceptance rate. It's, I mean, quite tougher. It's about 20%, maybe even a little less than that. So it's not the 40% rate. But I'll stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Laurie. Very much helpful again. So let's conclude this first round with and invite Raphael Ziegler to share his views and thoughts with us. What is interesting, Raphael, is that I have had the pleasure and the honor to work with Raphael in some research projects, so I know pretty well. And I have to say that it's been interesting to discover that there is room, there is a space in the management literature, or better in the business ethics literature. There might be potential room for papers inspired by the capability approach. So while Raphael is also an associate editor of the Journal of Human Development, he's wearing the hat of the associate editor of Journal of Social Entrepreneurship. And again, I would think that it would be important to know from you, what is your experience, or what are the chances that the scholars may have to consider your journal?
Yeah, okay, thank you, Enrica. So this Journal of Social Entrepreneurship is relatively recent. It has been around for maybe 12 years. And as the name says, it focuses, it originates from a business school context with this interest in organizations that have both a social purpose and usually also a kind of structure that goes beyond the shareholder-owned enterprise. So think, for example, of a cooperative to have an alternative type of structure. And this journal is interdisciplinary. There are qualitative and increasingly also quantitative papers. So I think initially it comes really from a lot of cases from business studies. but there's also, you know, psychologists who work on intentions, who increasingly publish on this topic, as well as sociologists, for example, who are interested more in this context of, the journal calls it sociality, in enterprise. This being said, so a lot of the articles are empirical, but they're also purely conceptual articles. So it's really, I think, in that sense, it's genuinely interdisciplinary. All the submissions are research articles. There are no book reviews and no policy papers. So it's really just one format. There have been some capabilities contribution in the past. I would say not that many. The highlight is really the special issue that Enrica edited for us, together with Nadia von Jacobi and Alex Nichols in 2017. So that's our one beacon for the capabilities approach in the journal. And it shows, I think, a little bit, and I can say that about this in a moment, that there is quite some possibilities, I think, to link the capabilities approach to the social entrepreneurship research. And maybe just briefly to this point that some of you highlighted regarding some of the problems maybe with articles, and that is, I think, in social entrepreneurship, what is very strongly there is that, of course, most authors are very often quite sympathetic with their cases. And so they tend to focus very strongly on the case and sometimes forget about the method of how they presented this case, and maybe also the downsides of it and so forth. I think that can be sometimes an issue here. And the other issue is also with, I think, with some of the capabilities-oriented submissions, what Martin had mentioned before, this idea to simply flag the capabilities approach towards the end as an option, rather than actually trying to use it. I think that is definitely also by now seen more as insufficient, and that authors would have to do more. And so from that perspective, I think what is definitely interesting and very welcome in the journal is, so when we talk about the social entrepreneurship, evidently the social calls for evaluation of the purpose, of the impact, of the process. And this is something where I think the capabilities approach as such has really a very natural fit to bring some analytic clarity into this, and go beyond the this kind of business case focus. And I think there is really a lot, especially if you think social entrepreneurship is very often driven by the idea of benefiting someone, and then forgetting that this someone is maybe an agent. So there is a strong instrumentalizing danger as well. And I think here again, this capabilities perspective can be very interesting. A second line is that historically the social entrepreneurship, at least in the Anglophone world, was very driven initially by sort of the myth of the individual entrepreneur. And I think increasingly also in business schools, it's clear that this is not how you have social impact. So you need to move beyond this. So it's important to focus on entrepreneurs, but not just on entrepreneurs. And I think what could be really interesting, and I think there's really not yet very much on this, is this whole line of collective capabilities and how shared intentions are formed as something that I think in the social entrepreneurship community, people are increasingly open to it. But I think there has been very little on this collective capability formation, and how it also includes to capacity to aspire, notably among so-called beneficiaries. And third element is that social entrepreneurship. So if you go on our homepage, it says one of the components is focus on markets. And so in the traditional innovation research, that always means introducing a technology for commercial use. And so that is one, I think, one focus. And there again, if you talk about technologies in this kind of social context, I think something that is very interesting is to think about technology in a bit less of an instrumental way, and try to think about what is in the capabilities literature called these conversion factors of technology design and also technology use, which I think links to a lot of these cases and would add a lot of potential focus. Finally, there is quite some articles in this journal on discourse analysis of social entrepreneurship as a kind of discourse. And I think there is a really interesting links here to this capabilities tradition of kind of being an counter-hegemonic discourse on how to think about the economy and how to think about economic development, which definitely pertains also to the social entrepreneurship discourse and who is really empowered and benefited by social entrepreneurship around the world. What I think is less in the focus, so the contributions really very often focus around, obviously, social entrepreneurship, individuals or enterprises initiatives. What I think is much less in the focus is so-called corporate social responsibility. So I think there's too many other journals that focus on this. So I think that's not really great to take that angle, even that if that's interesting too, but I think it's not a natural focus in this journal. What is much more, I think, an opportunity, and I think one that is, so there in the social entrepreneurship discussion, there is increasingly a realization, I would say, that beyond this novelty of the term, there are older traditions of social and solidarity economy that have many of the features that are sought after in social entrepreneurship. And I think there is a very natural overlap with many of the traditional development cooperation interests in social and solidarity economy, and trying to bring them to say that there are these longer standing traditions that also were researched in the capabilities approach, which is, I think, another interesting perspective from the capabilities approach traditions and what could be interesting angles. Maybe one last one is that even though officially the journal says that social entrepreneurship is always focused, has this market orientation, I think in practice there are quite some papers that also realize that value is also created in non-market, so in the informal sector, in communities, and in families. And here again, I think there is something very interesting about households and families, where the capabilities approach has a lot of tools and traditionally to think about this and the value produced there that could be imported maybe into this discussion that discovers this right now as part of sometimes called grassroots innovation, but it has that as a link has not really been made so far. So that's a little bit. I can't unfortunately offer you the desk rate rejection number. I don't know it, but I'll try to find it out.
Thank you, Rafael. Super. So this is just my impression, but I have the impression that it might be the role of entrepreneur and the role of firms and companies should be more investigated from a capability perspective, because I think it is quite important, but it's been quite neglected right now. So we have papers on social innovation and social entrepreneurship for sure, but the application of the capability approach can be quite interesting in the field of the entrepreneurship. So thank you so much. Very quickly, before going to the second round of discussion, I'm just wondering, are you aware about the fact that maybe your journal is planning or is has in the pipeline some special issues that might be relevant for the capability community? So there are any special issues that you are considering, or that are any call for papers open on some specific special issues that might be relevant for our community?
So for the Journal of Social Entrepreneurship, I don't know of a special issue there's not that many special issues actually, but it could be proposed. I mean, they're open to special issues. But
is there any key topics or key issues that you think that will be relevant for your journals that might be investigated from the capability perspective?
Is this a question to all of us, Enrique?
Yes, please open the micro and just react.
I'll say that the Journal of Global Ethics is always interested in special issue proposals. And sometimes a proposal will come in and we'll discuss about whether or not it's relevant for our journal and say, well, maybe if there were more papers on ethics, in addition to some that talk about ethics and some that are more methodological for economics. So that might be the kind of comment that somebody would get. But we're always interested in hearing about your special issue ideas. So if you're interested in developing a vein of the capabilities approach or human development, and including, and one nice thing about our journal is that because we're not only concerned with the capabilities approach, we can have a set of papers that are some of them on the capabilities approach and some of them coming at the problem from different angles with other frameworks and other methodologies. considering the same ethical issue in under different lenses. So any of those kinds of proposals that membership of the Capabilities Approach Association has, we're interested.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have one coming up on sustainability already in the works. So it'd have to be a different wrinkle about that, but yes, thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to say?
Maybe Enrica can say something about special issues, although they are related with capability approach. So there is a proposal from the education group to prepare a special issue on education and capability. So I think the coordinator of the education group, or one of the coordinators, will be leading this one. And also, well, there is something that I would like to say something more in my next round, but we would like to encourage special issues or paper related with global South issues that can be development thinking. I'm thinking about development perspectives that were rooted more on the global South geographies. Could be special issues like racism that affect not only global South, but also but from a global South perspective, they can have an interesting approach. So these kind of topics are really welcome at the moment to propose special issues or contribute with papers. But I'm going to say something more in my next round.
Thank you, Sandra. Any other comments?
From my side, concerning special issues, our policy to increase the number of special issues, because it's very interesting to have a collection of articles discussing altogether on a topic. And I believe that in the past we had some special issues devoted on capability approach. I don't know exactly how many, but I believe more than one for sure. The process is that I receive as editor-in-chief the proposal on a special issue, and then after my approval, we have a part of the web page devoted to the submission, the official submissions of special issues. And we have a particular organization inside, because we need to have one of the our co-editors, working with the people proposing the special issue, because we have also a submission process that maybe is a little bit articulated. So just to support people working on special issues. But this is just an organizational.
Yeah, maybe I can say a little bit. I should say this is also, I'm not directly involved now, so I cannot say anything about whether there's special issues in the pipeline. But I mean, two remarks. So in the past, we had special issues, but we really treat them as individual paper submissions. So it can be the case that, that the special issue is not realized because some of the papers are being rejected in the process, and then the other papers are being published without the signature special issue. That's one remark. And the second one is I was thinking about a special issue about the capability approach. I'm not sure whether that would be the best angle. I would then, really think about a specific theme, as I think Laurie also emphasized for the Journal of Global Ethics, and then, take that theme. Because there's, maybe we can talk about a little bit more, there's a risk that, if you work in the capability approach, that you're being seen as a believer for some, and that is risky.
Thank you, Martha. I completely agree with you. Yeah, my question was regarding topics that might be relevant to be investigated.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you. It's absolutely important to have a dialogue across different school of thought or different perspectives that might be relevant for that specific topic. So, thank you. So, is now we still have something like about half an hour or even slightly more. So the second round should be shorter, should be quicker. The question is that just to, and this indeed, there are already some questions that are touching this point. So are you, what do you think that is, or what is the position of your journals or the journals where you are involved in regarding the open access issues, which is becoming a quite key issues for academics in general, but for sure, especially for scholars based in the global south, and even for young scholars that may not have funds or resources sufficient for affording these high fees required for publishing open access. So in one way, it seems to be a positive thing because this can allow people, no matter where they live, to have access to academic journals. But there is this important obstacle or barrier that may limit the possibility for young scholars or scholars based in the global south, but even scholars based in a more smaller universities or more little university to have this funds. So again, what is your view regarding this? And if there is any other facilities or support that your journal is offering, especially for non-English speaking countries? Again, we can start from using the reverse alphabetic order. So Rafael, would you like to start first?
Yeah, so for the open access, I asked, so basically there is no plans to go full open access. It's basically an option. So, and this apparently is also, you can select open access, but there is no plan to go full open access. For the special support, there are no journal dedicated policies that would give you special support if you're from a specific background. However, I found one thing, I put it in the chat, one moment. So basically the publisher that owns this journal, Taylor Francis, they have one initiative that is maybe interesting, and there you can, so their idea is that to prepare articles, it can be interesting to have better access. So you can have open access to up to 50 articles for free per year with all the journals that they own. So maybe that's interesting. And they also link to something they call the author aid portal, and that is basically a long list with all kinds of not from this publisher, but from different funding organizations that support authors, but there's nothing dedicated from the journal.
Thank you, Rafael. Laurie?
Well, our journal is also with Taylor and Francis, so it's basically the same story. Though I will note that there are sometimes exceptions that we're able to sort of lobby for with Taylor and Francis. For example, Des Gasper and I did a special issue through the Journal of Global Ethics on Louis-Joseph Lebray and his work. And we hosted an event. We hosted a few events, including a Global Dialogues event at the HDCA last year. And for that reason, they allowed us to have a few months in which the entire issue was available so that interested scholars could fully participate and be aware of that. So we asked, is there anything we can do? And they said, yes, we'll make it available for a few months. So sometimes we're able to do that on a case-by-case basis and by request, but it's a very similar story to Rafael's story here. Thank you. As a Taylor and Francis journal.
Yeah, thank you, Laurie. I think that this is important to negotiate with the publisher the possibility to have an open access issues at least for a few months, so to allow to circulate it. So Martin.
Yeah, I'm afraid I didn't anticipate this question. Cambridge, so Economics and Philosophy is published by Cambridge University Press. And I just was checking the website, so they have quite a bit of information about the possibilities. As far as I know, there's no journal-specific facilities there. It's just part of the general Cambridge policy.
What about the open access issue, in the sense that this is something that you know if there is an open discussion regarding this open access issue, or there is a policy that the Economics and Philosophy Journal is taking on this regard?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is something that I should check and consult, the current team about what's happening there. So
Thank you, Martin. Filomena?
Well, social indicators research is considered a transformative journal. It means that the authors of accepted manuscript submissions, they can choose if they can publish in a traditional way, with a traditional publishing model, or in open access. Of course, open access needs a fee. But there is an opportunity that maybe not everybody knows. Each institution, like a university, can have an agreement with the Springer, and in these cases, the author can have the opportunity to publish in open access, but without fee, because there is this agreement with the Springer. Generally, many universities have this agreement with the Springer. So I really suggest, especially younger researchers, to take advantage of this opportunity and to publish in open access without fee. There is a limitation, but advantage of that.
Thank you, Filomena. That's absolutely true. The question is that this is a possibility that only European universities or universities based in the global north are able to offer to their scholars, while most people academic staff or based in the global south, these opportunities is not simply not available. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, Sandra, would you like to conclude? Then we can go for the Q&A.
Okay, thanks, Enrica. So similar comments from my previous from the previous intervention, and particularly with our journal, we are at the moment discussing the new contract with Taylor and Francis, and we have asked Taylor and Francis to have special waivers for open access papers. We don't have a policy discussing our associate editor team about which one is going to be our policy to distribute these special waivers if at the end we got this this opportunity from Taylor and Francis. But one of our ideas is to use this open access to spread papers, especially from early career scholar based on global south countries, because they don't have normally the same opportunities as the others that are based in Europe or the United States. This is one thing. And with regard to giving some support to early career researchers, this is something that is going beside the policy of the association. So it's something to be discussed as well in our meetings, but the idea is to try to encourage members of the advisory board to act as a mentor for early career researchers that want to prepare a new paper. I don't know what is going to be our success with that, but it's something that we would like to propose, to create like a mentorship program to help early career researchers to write papers, etc. This is something that we have in mind. Also, we are trying to appoint new associate editor from the Global South as well. So we are looking for profiles with more diversity from that side. And also, same as the special issues, we are encouraging proposal of with special issues of topics that are connected with Global South thinking on problematics, etc. So this is a way of encouraging these new topics. And before I forget, I'm going to put on the chat the link to another journal. I'm editor as well, associate editor, not editor-in-chief. And this journal is connected with the development issues, and it's open access. So it's not probably high rank, no, in these publisher rankings, but it's another opportunity for people that want to publish pieces of research related with human development capabilities, because they accept this kind of topics. So I'm going to write this on the journal. Is the Ibero-American, well, I don't know the name in English, but I'm going to write into the chat.
Thank you, Sandra. So if the panelists they don't have any further suggestions or comments to make, I think that now is time. But I would like to ask Raphael if we can proceed with the Q&A session. Would be okay?
Yes, sure. We actually already have Gareth raising his hand. So maybe Gareth, you can unmute yourself, your video, and raise your questions.
I can see that Gareth already raised a question related to open access in the chat. And in a way, this question has been probably already addressed. But yes, if Gareth, if you have any further comments or questions on this subject, please go ahead.
Thanks, Enrica, and thanks, Raphael, and for the rest of the team. That is, I think it's a comment to the teams that are part of the editorial teams of the con. Is maybe it's worth sharing some information, particularly as you're renegotiating the contract. So it's great to hear, Sandra. I was part of the previous renegotiation for JHDC when I was treasurer for the HDCA, and it was focused on the finance and the money to make sure there was funding for the administration. But with the journal that I assistant edit with Taylor and Francis as well, we get one free access paper per issue. So the editor who's leading that collation gets to name it, and I think it gets become open access. I think for it's either a year or for 3 months or 6 months, something like that, but per issue. And obviously, Philomena already mentioned the agreements that the universities have, and so most of our open access through that. The other thing just to mention, because we used it when we did a special issue with Third World Quarterly, which is also Taylor and Francis, is that they formally allow you to publish the paper separately, or to allow it on, say, your own website or your institution's website prior to the peer review, not the peer review process, prior to the editorial process. So once it's been accepted, or no, sorry, a pre-peer review edition of the paper. So for junior scholars who would like to obviously get it in a high-ranking journal, but also want a paper that's accessed, double check with your editors and teams. But I believe it is possible to have an earlier version in the public domain totally legitimately, and that may help with dissemination.
Thank you. Very interesting. So let's just go. We have a couple of interesting questions in the chat. The first one has been raised by Sasha Ban. Hope that the name is correct. She's asking, are there opportunities for early career researchers to shadow reviewers to learn the process and get experience? This question is for all journals, but especially for the Journal of Human Development. So, Sandra, would you like to start?
Well, apart from this idea of the mentorship program, which we have to discuss with the association, the idea also is to prepare some materials for the web page about how to prepare a manuscript and these kind of things. And maybe in the next summer school, in the next HDCA in India, having a special session on how to prepare a manuscript for the journal. Those are the ideas. But if you have other ideas, please write to me, write to Catherine, and then we can discuss in our editorials teams and with the association as well.
Thank you, Sandra. I don't know if Sasha is still there, and I don't know if you'd like to comment or to ask.
No, that's
fine.
Hello, Sandra. Yeah, hello. No, that's perfect. Thank you. And sorry, I think I felt like I duplicated because you did. I sent the question before you talked about the mentorship, so apologies, and that sounds like a fantastic opportunity. But yeah, all help welcome. Thank you.
Thanks to you. Thank you. So we have a second question here, which is especially for social indicators research, but also for others. I don't know who is raised this question, so maybe he or she can add up to something. But the question is that you, Filomena, mentioned that you don't often reject CA papers because you are receiving papers submitted by high-level experts in the field. Do you recommend early career researchers who would like to submit the journal, submit with the CA experts? Or do you have other advice for early career researchers to get accepted to this journal? So it's a matter of strategy that you may have. So better to go to also papers with more experienced people, or they might be free, or you may suggest to submit their papers even if they are just early career researchers?
Well, of course, there is also an individual strategy on this. But first of all, I would suggest younger researchers to act as reviewers. Because in this role, there is a lot of opportunity to learn how the paper is written, and I believe that it is a really nice experience. It's better to do this before in order to understand in which way a paper is done, than to send a submission and to be rejected, which is not a nice experience. And sometimes we encourage, at the same time we reject the paper, we send some suggestions. Please introduce better your work, a better organization of your presentation, and encourage also to resubmit, especially when we see that the topic is strong, the methodology is strong. It's just a question of how to present the work. So we do in this way. We reject, but with some advices. At the same time, each author is invited to act also as a reviewer. It's not a bad idea to allow also young researchers to act in this way, because also the reviewer is able to learn. It's not only a judgment, it's also a moment where you can learn, also as a reviewer.
Thank you, Filomena. That's very helpful. You say that it's not nice to see rejected the paper, but this, just in order to be clear, this is something that we experienced.
Yeah. It's not a judgment to the person or to the work, but just the shape.
Even for us who are, for sure, we are less young or differently young, this is an experience that we may have, and so because we have heard the percentage of acceptance is maybe around 10% or 20% at the best. So of course, even our work can be rejected and is rejected. So it is not just a sort of a frustrating experience for younger scholars, but it's something that is part of our work, it's a part of our experience. So it shouldn't be frustrating, but indeed, if we are lucky enough to get good reviewers' reports, we can learn a lot, and we can improve our research work. So this is true for everybody. Sandra, would you like to add up something?
Yes, I would like to say that regarding the special issues, I think you can correct me, Enrica, because you have the memory of the last special issues. Normally, there are special issues related with some projects on some initiatives, no? Maybe a collective project or something like that. But I think a good way of involving early career scholars, and also to enhance the groups of the association, the thematic groups, is proposing special issues from the thematic groups. I think it's a good strategy, because this is not the bottom up, of course, with good quality. That's we assume that all the stuff we publish in the journal is a good quality stuff, but using the thematic group to propose special issues, and maybe the leading of the special issue could be shared from between an early career and a more senior scholar. So these kind of things also can be possible. And I think it's a good way of contributing to the association, but also to learn from all the process of publishing, no? Especially for early career scholars.
Thank you, Sandra. Martin.
Yeah, just one remark about the kind of response that you can get. I mean, we all know the rejections. It always hurts. I mean, that remains, I guess. But I do think that we are all entitled, but especially young scholars, to have a constructive report. So I'm not talking about desk rejections. That can happen. That's clear. You get the motivation, and then so be it. But if you get a report which is not informative, which is not constructive, which is not charitable, then I think it is a good idea to just, write back and say, okay, I'm going to submit it elsewhere, but I do think, and point out that you're unhappy about the report, that you think it violates the standards of professional decency also. So I do think I would like to encourage everyone to take that line. And the other thing about, supporting within the capability approach, I do indeed think that the root of the thematic groups and involving senior scholars in helping out, I mean, this mentoring part, and not necessarily only for special issues. I think that's a very useful way of going about. Conversely, approaching editors, especially, the active editors, they are dealing with so many papers, the workload is so high. I don't think that's the most natural route. So people in advisory boards, people who've been there, they can be involved, I guess. So 2 remarks.
Martin, we are thinking not the associate editor, but the advisory board, which are different, because the associate editors, they are too busy and they're doing many things.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we don't want to put more, and also they can have conflict of interest, no? Imagine in this kind of task, but it's more the advisory board, which is a big number of people, senior people normally, that maybe, we hope so, they want to engage with the association on that role.
Yeah.
Thank you. So there is another question here in the chat, Eva Fortes. So she's thanking all the panelists and the organizers for this session, and she wants to ask some of you have mentioned that suggesting the capability approach as a possible solution in the conclusion is not a good idea, is not a good fit, for their journal, because their readership is already quite expert in the CA. Are there other journals where the readership is less familiar with the CA where that approach could be welcome? So for instance, it might be for social indicator researchers or the Journal of Social Entrepreneurship. So again, how you can balance in a proper way, depending on the journal, the basic ideas that are in the capability approach, or where you can skip on these and go straight to the point. So it's a matter of the journal. So as we said, for the Journal of Human Development, capability probably is not so helpful to spend many pages just in order to describe what the capability approach is or why it can be an interesting approach, because the readership is usually already on this. But what about the other journals? How do you suggest to find the proper balance between narrative in the capability approach or go straight to the point? So to what extent, in a way, this approach has been already pretty well consolidated in our different disciplines and can be, in a way, just mentioned without being too much discussed.
Like capability approach is very well known, also among the readers of social indicators research. But of course, readers knowing this approach are interested in reading more. In terms of social indicators research, in terms of methodology, in terms of new indicators and new applications, maybe less interested in very local applications. This could be not really interesting for a wide audience, worldwide audience. But of course, there are other local journals, maybe.
Thank you, Filomena. Lori, please.
Journal of Global Ethics is also, our readership's also quite familiar with the capabilities approach. And so I want to say that, but I also wanted to go back to just a quick advice for early career people, because I know we don't have much time. I agree with what has been said about reviewers, and we would happily welcome reviewers. And some early career people we've contacted to review say, I'm not yet experienced. We're asking you because we want you, and we'll have another reviewer. So don't feel like you're not ready for it. This is a great way to step in. And in terms of getting a foot in the door, remember the global reflections. They're going to be, the reflections on the global forum, they're going to be not full peer reviewed, and they're shorter. So that's a good way to go in. When using the capabilities approach for our journal, again, we're familiar with it. We don't do a lot of case studies, but if you do something new with it without explaining it in each paper, then that's very welcome from any vantage point. We're always interested in capabilities approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Raphael, and then Martin.
Yeah, so this is just to get back to Eva's comment. And so the idea was not that you cannot introduce the capabilities approach. It was just that you actually do something with it, because I think it has been too long around that you can just say, because you mentioned it, it's somehow new. And so just do something with it, you know? And I think the other point, and I think that's also sometimes maybe Sandra or Enrica can say something in the Journal of Human Development, a bit an issue. I think there are sometimes articles that have this introduction of the capabilities approach where, you know, 50 citations of Amartya Sen from the 80s, and you don't even know what exactly is being cited here. And so maybe they could be more specific and just go, because there are then specialists who work on these things, you know, to say, okay, this has been around for long enough that you can actually find material, whereas people have worked on your specific issue, and you don't need to do Amartya Sen says. I think that's sometimes a bit the danger, right? People say that's Amartya Sen said it, and then therefore it's a great idea, which is not against Amartya Sen, but just to say, you know, do something with it.
Thank you, Rafa. Yes, you're absolutely right. Again, this is the reason of my suggestions that I gave before. So to try to be engaged with the literature that has been already published in that journal. Because the presumption is that the readers are already familiar with this data, so you can try to connect to this debate and try to move a step further. So, Martin?
Yeah, just also in response to Eva's remark. So I also think, you know, economics and philosophy, the readers are quite familiar with the capability approach. And the thrust of my remark about not putting in the conclusion was really, I think that Raphael also refers to, is really to try to be constructive. I mean, if there's a problem, show how the capability approach helps us understanding it, rather than concluding that we should move to the capability approach. I think that line is really, yeah. I mean, I've seen many papers in the past which had that kind of closing. That I think is really not wise. So be constructive.
Enrica, you have to unmute.
Okay, sorry. So I was just saying that we still have a very few minutes left. So I would ask to the organizers if I have missed any questions in the chat, or if we still have time for one question, quick question, Or finally, if you like just to conclude with you, Rafael, or anyone.
So maybe we have one question from Gareth. Maybe Gareth, you might want to ask that yourself.
Wasn't planning on, but it's just about language beyond English. So if any of the journals have any thoughts or discussions, it'd be interesting. Obviously, I know all the journals are mainly published in English, but if anyone's doing anything innovative around language beyond English, that'd be great to hear. Thanks.
I was aware recently that the journal accepts papers in Spanish, French, and English. The problem could be find good reviewers, but this is a policy of the Journal of Human Development and Capabilities.
Yeah, that's true. This is a policy of the journal, was a policy of the journal, although we didn't publish so many articles in other languages. And the risk is that, as Sandra was pointed out, is that it might not be easy to find reviewers that can be available to review papers in other languages. And the second risk that I can see, but this is very my personal view, is that is a narrowing down in a way the possibility to spread out your ideas, in a sense that is a niche. It might be a big niche, but for sure it's not again the international community. So this can in a way introduce some biases in the review process, some biases in the possibility to be published, and in any case is limiting the possibility for the readership to benefit and to learn from these papers. So it's always something that is quite tricky and hard to decide. And in a way, it seems to be reasonable to publish papers in other languages, but there are some there's tension limits. But again, this is just my view. So I'm just wondering.
But just to go to say something, if we receive good papers in Spanish or French, me personally, I will push to find good reviewers and open the opportunity to start the peer review process in the journal. I know that is difficult, but I mean, I don't want to close the opportunity of publishing in French or Spanish, at least in these two languages.
Okay, so I guess that we are really at the end of the time available. So Rafael, would you like to conclude?
It's a really interesting. Well, there are two Raphaels here, and sometimes I get very confused. But thank you very much. Thank you very much, all panelists, and also Enrica. Panelists will have a small breakout group later to thank you personally from our coordination side. Just to let everyone know that this is really just the tip of the iceberg of the discussion. We actually have a lot more questions that we were discussing together with Enrica. For example, what is the effect of AI on publications, both from the writer side as well as the editorial side? As you can already see, even in the chat, we are being combed by AI to take notes for someone on their behalf. So you can see how this is really shaping the discussion, even interjecting into our lives, whether we want it or not. And so stay tuned with this. Our network will try to arrange something and try and bring some of these topics a little further deeper. But of course, here today we only have 1.5 hours. I hope you have already had enough to think about, and just stay tuned. And if you have topics that you really like to hear, really would like to address, then write to us. We are the Early Career Researchers and Practitioners Network. So we also do things in practice, also for practitioners. And we will be very happy, of course, to receive your input, your ideas, and we see how we can develop there from that onwards. So thank you very much, everyone, for the session. And this will be recorded, and we will try to have this uploaded on the HDCA website. Okay.
Thank you all the participants and the panelists. It's been really great, great day.